Hello and Happy New Year. I am so glad that you found your way to my channel. Welcome or welcome back. I hope that this video can be a cozy reading start to your new year. I haven't filmed in quite a while, so I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Michelle. I'm a former English major and Spanish major. I finished law school this past year. I'm not quite an attorney yet. I'm retaking the bar exam in February. Most importantly, I love to read. I started this channel as a travel channel when I studied abroad in Oxford. You can go back and check out those videos if you'd like. That trip also was centered around reading. I took a Jane Austen course at Oxford, loved it, just absolutely loved it. So now that I've been traveling less, I've transitioned this channel more into books with travel sprinkled in. The last 3 years while I was in law school, I didn't keep up with this channel. That wasn't a huge priority, but reading and keeping up with that was a really big priority for me. And I'm really proud. I read 40 books each of the 3 years that I was in law school. And I'm really glad that I kept doing that because that was a huge piece of myself. The past 3 years and really 4 years since that pre-law school admission cycle and COVID hit and starting law school during COVID, and the entire experience of law school felt really draining. And I feel like law school and the law took a lot out of me. I feel like law school sucked the life out of me a little bit, if you will. Honestly, law school really drained me, and I am not passionate about the law in the same way that I am about languages and literature and reading and books and English. I love my job, and that's why I'm giving the bar exam a second shot. But this year, I really want to lean into reading and keep doing that. And I want to share it with you guys because I love talking about books too. And that's what's missing, not being an English major anymore and not being in that degree program. I don't get to talk about the books that I read. Without further ado, I'd like to tell you about my reading goals for 2024 because I have some big ones. So I'm currently in 2 book clubs. Historically, I've been in up to as many as 4 at any one time, which during law school was just absolutely insane, but here we are. Those ones are the Wolfpack Book Club. We are reading all of Virginia Woolf. For me, most of them have been rereads, and we are currently on the years for January and February. Now, this is the last Wolf that I have not read, actually, and since I will be taking the bar exam at the end of February, and I'm currently in the middle of a different book that I really want to finish by the end of February, I'm going to postpone that one, and I may not even get to it this year, and that's okay. This is my last new Wolf, and I really want to enjoy that one and maybe have a bit of a fresher perspective when I go into it versus having just come off of every single Wolf book ever. So for that one in March, then we will be reading Three Guineas and then wrapping up the book club with her last work, Between the Acts. So that will be wrapped up this year. I'm almost done with that one. I'm so excited. This has been a 1.5 to 2-year project, and I'm so glad I did it. Even with law school, even with bar prep, it was worth it. It's been great. The other book club that I joined is Emma and Carolyn's Book of Tomes book club. I joined back when it was Dickens versus Tolstoy. I joined about halfway through. I'm not sure what year it was for them, like second or third, but I started with Barnaby Rudge. That was my first book. So I made it through that one. Then last year they switched it to Game of Tomes, and this year they're reading a bunch of really big books. So I will overlay my video that I took of all the books they're reading. I'm missing 2 of them. I'll get into it a bit later. But I'm switching it up for my own sanity and my own reading desires. So in 2024, I'm gonna be reading some real big books. Are you ready? In January and February, that I have already started and I'm about 100 pages into, is Bleak House by Charles Dickens. I started this one right when I first started the Dickens versus Tolstoy book club, and I was reading Barnaby Rudge. It was going great. I was loving it. I started this in March, made it to about June, and made it 300 pages in, as you can see. But then it was summer, and this is a very bleak and rainy and somber book, so I wasn't feeling it anymore, and I knew once I started back 3L in the fall, I wouldn't be feeling like picking this one up as much. So I put it on pause, and last month I'd just been really craving some more Dickens. Reading this book in conjunction with the bar exam is also a little bit for me and my personal enjoyment. I was told before law school to read things that you would really enjoy before you started. You wouldn't have as much time, but don't read these heavy law books. And I was specifically told, don't read Bleak House by Charles Dickens. So here we are taking the bar exam for the second time, and I am in fact reading Bleak House by Charles Dickens, and I'm loving it. It's fantastic. I don't think I'll get into what each of these books is about too much in this video, but as I'm reading and as I'm giving updates, I'll let you know and tell you more about them. This one, since I am a little of the ways into it, know a bit about it, I will give you a little synopsis. This is about the case Jarvis v. Jarvis, which is this ongoing trust property dispute, years and years in the Chancery Court in England. And it's critiquing the legal system. It's about some of these parties involved and how it's really affected them. And it feels so constraining. And there's these themes of constraint, imprisonment versus liberty and what justice means. And I'm loving it. I'm excited to finally finish this one in 2024. The next book I will be reading in March and April is the Game of Thrones pick. That is Middlemarch by George Eliot. I read this novel for the first time in my fiction versus reality class when I was studying for my English major. I loved it. This is one of my good friend's favorite books. I loved studying it in this class with a professor who regularly studies Victorian and on the cusp of Victorian literature. This one is about a provincial town in England, and our primary character, our main character that we follow, is Dorothea. I will read for you the last line of the first, I think it's the prologue, the prelude. I will read you the last line of the prelude, which I highlighted and I think about all the time. Here and there is born a Saint Teresa, foundress of nothing, whose loving heartbeats and sobs after an unattained goodness tremble off and are dispersed among hindrances instead of centering in some long recognizable deed. So this is really just about goodness and putting goodness into the world, and whether or not you're going to be recognized for that and get goodness out. And it's about women. I don't remember too much of the subplots and the actual plot, but I just remember how this book made me feel. So I'm really excited to reread this one. I do have some travel plans this year. My husband and I are going to be taking our honeymoon in March or April, sometime around that, and we are going to Ireland. This has been a dream of ours for so long. So of course, in May and June, I will be reading Ulysses. We haven't booked our trip yet, but most likely we're going to Ireland a little bit sooner. However, I did want to read Middlemarch, and Ulysses is best read in June because Bloom Day takes place in June. I believe it is June 24th. So I have slowly for the past couple of years been making it through Joyce's work. I read Dubliners after my first year of law school, and I read A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man last year. Portrait was so amazing. It was so good. 5 stars. It was fantastic, and I'm so excited for Ulysses, and I'm hoping to pick up Finnegan's Wake while I am in Ireland. Then I do not have the book for July and August. This one is one of the Game of Tome ones. This is 1Q84 by Haruki Murakami. I'm so excited to get to this one. My one friend recommended it to me before law school. It's her favorite Murakami, and I have not read it yet. So I saw this on the list. I have to read it, and I don't know too much about this one and don't want to know too much about it. The only Murakami I've read is what I talk about when I talk about running. Actually, I read that right after I ran my half marathon. I thought it was okay, but that was more of nonfiction, memoir type book, and I haven't read any of his work, so I'm really excited to get into that one. Then September, October, I'm not sure if it's going to happen. For Game of Tomes, they're actually reading this in January and February, but I've been planning to read this one with my sister for a long time now, and that is The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas. I just picked up this Penguin cloth-bound classic edition at Barnes & Noble's sale. I read the abridged version in high school. That was Honors 9 over the summer, and it was really confusing. At first, I didn't realize it was abridged until I got to this part where it mentions when he was in prison. I was like, what do you mean? And it started talking about all these things that happened that they just cut out huge swath of this book. They massacred it. I'm excited to read it in full. This is the classic revenge novel. The Count is imprisoned and he comes up with this plot for revenge. I'm so excited to read it. Hopefully my sister can join in. This is one of my husband's favorite books, and I'm excited to read this one. Then November and December, I'm reading with Game of Tomes again, and this is one that I've already read. I read this the summer after Greta Gerwig's film came out, so that'll give you a little hint. It's Little Woman by Louisa A. May Alcott. My sister gifted me this gorgeous edition for Christmas last year. This one also has Little Men and Joe's Boys. I don't know if I'll read those while I'm at it, but I hope to read them soon. So this is the part that's actually Little Woman, but it's still hefty and it's quite large. It does have both parts of Little Woman in this one. I checked, had a moment of panic. If I'm going to be honest, I was a bit disappointed the first time I read this book after watching the film, because I think Greta Gerwig does it so wonderfully, where she splits the timeline between Little Woman and Good Wives, that second half, and the emotion is just so much more powerful, and I'm very into that kind of storytelling, and it had a more modernist, postmodernist feel, if that makes sense. When I read it that summer, I was really surprised that it was more linear, just flat, but I've been reading some quotes from it. They're very beautiful. I want to give it a second chance, and I'm hoping to appreciate it more. Then I also want to show the start of my Pan Macmillan collection. Thank you to my sister who got these for me for Christmas this year. I think I'm going to try to read all of these as well this year, but we'll see what I end up getting to. The first one I was gifted was Malice Aforethought by Frances Ellis, if I am saying that correctly. I saw this in one of Carolyn's videos. She got it for her birthday. Someone said it looked very creepy and they sent it to her, and I'm studying for the bar. I'm absolutely bombing Crim Pro, not Crim Law as much, but Crim Pro I am bombing. So Malice Aforethought. It's one of the requisites to murder. What better way to study for the bar and really get my enjoyment out of it than reading a classic novel that is, the synopsis said, one of the first inverted detective novels. So not finding out who done it, but will he get away with it? My sister also got me the American Classics collection. I know. I'm so spoiled. So first we have The House of Mirth by Edith Wharton. Obviously I've heard of Edith Wharton, haven't read anything by her, and haven't heard of The House of Mirth. So I'm excited about this one. I think I'm going to tackle it first around the middle March time frame, if I have time, if I'm feeling up to that. The second one in the box is The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. I've never read this one, believe it or not, but I'm planning on reading this one in the summer around July, when it's going to be about 100 degrees and feel like I am sailing on a raft down the Mississippi River. The next one I have read, this is The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. I read this for honors 10th grade English. I think I pretty much remember it. It wasn't my favorite. It wasn't my least favorite. I'm excited to reread it. I've watched Easy A now, of course, more about it in pop culture. hadn't even heard of or read The Handmaid's Tale the first time I read this one, so I'm excited to come to it with a new perspective. I know this wasn't a lot of people's favorites. Then the final one in the collection is one I've been wanting to read forever since someone in high school recommended it to me and said it was her favorite book, but that is The Beautiful and Damned by F. Scott Fitzgerald. I don't know anything about this one. Don't really want to. The only Fitzgerald I've read is The Great Gatsby. I loved it the first time I read it. The second time I read it, when I read it in an American Lit class, didn't love it. So we'll see how this one goes. We'll see how the entire collection goes, because honestly, I'm not a huge fan of American literature. This is a good way to get back into it. Then I have two last books that I wanted to show you that I'm going to throw into this video and into my goals because I got them both recently and I think they'd fit in nicely. These are both poetry. The first is Emily Dickinson. I saw this little copy and could not leave her behind. This is the Barnes & Noble edition. I'm gonna read this one like more winter, leading out of winter into spring. That's sort of the plan there. Then finally, last but not least, I have Leaves of Grass by Walt Whitman. I'm hoping this is the entirety of the poem. We shall see. But I saw this little copy. We went up to Iowa State and watched a game with our friends. There was an independent bookstore there because, of course, knew there had to be one. I picked up this 150th Penguin edition, and I love the little roots. So obviously I'm going to try to read this one in summer. Those are all my books. Those are all my reading goals for 2024. If I don't manage to accomplish this great feat, I will not be disappointed, but I'm hoping to read some really great books in 2024 and I'm really excited. I'd love to have you come along with me. Thank you so much for watching and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye.